We are recording, and I have a
Great.
notebook for today.
Excellent.
I'm just going to do a better job of, keeping track of some of my thoughts. And I just found that I'm starting to lose a little on the range that I have of those 5 things after a question that I just want to eloquently put in order. So I'm gonna go back to analog and start putting some things down on paper again.
While it still exists.
Yes.
Before we're all Neuralinked up and paper.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other option would be for me to type it out with another machine as we're discussing it, right? But
yeah,
my skills on typing, brain to typing and listening is not high enough, but I can still do little notes and listen at the same time. So I think actually I got that practice from consulting with people where I had to learn how to be really good with that, like just take that down, but also stay engaged with the conversation and attentive. Yeah. I want to mention too, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I want to mention the podcast today is sponsored by OPEC CCP Digital Immersion, which is happening today and tomorrow. Coaches worldwide participating in 2 days of coming together in a virtual world to talk about things like, how does this education of fitness help you in impact and other things? So that's who sponsored our episode today.
It's an awesome experience. Brandon and I did it last fall, and if you guys haven't done it, you should do it. That being said, you may need a time machine because when people hear this, it will be 4 weeks hence.
That's right. That's right.
That's okay, because our podcast will be like, remember we said $21.99.
Yes.
This is going to be on the loudspeaker. It's going to be the call to prayer. When we'll time travel back.
Is that an elk? No, that's the speaker for fitness and creative thought. My gosh, it sounds like a squealing elk. What episode is this? 25, 26?
26.
26?
Yeah.
Mats Naslund was number 26 with the Montreal Canadiens. Fantastic number. Also divisible by that crazy number 13. Another interesting point of 26.
True.
I'm sure the 26th floor at a high rise somewhere in New York City is pretty cool. And I guarantee you somewhere in New York City on the 26th floor, there's a Peloton next to the window.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What was year 26 like for you?
That was 2000, year 2000. So I didn't even think I was going to exist. I thought when the clock changed, you're like,
Yeah, okay.
Everything worked out. 26. Whew, 26 was a great year. I was in Calgary building the business, and 1 year deep into this whole thing called OPEX on my own, just figuring things out. At the time, I worked in a Imperial Oil corporate fitness center. I managed that as a professional fitness and lifestyle consultant. That was my title. And I was pretty bored. It was a good year.
A very good year.
Yeah, lots of, ironically, this book right here, see this book called Training? Very eloquent. Has workouts from the year 2000.
Really? Wow.
Let's go back and see what I was doing at that in 2000. You ready for one? Just one particular workout? All right. Let's do this. Even with the dates, that would be like higher order. Let me find something here. Oh, yes. February the 6th. I did 3 exercises on that day. Snatch pulls, and I supersetted Airx jump. You know the Airx pads, those blue soft pads.
I don't think I've seen those, or maybe I have, but don't recognize the name.
Somehow I did what's called Airx single leg jumps. Apparently, it was helping my snatch pulls because I supersetted it. So I did snatch first exercise. Looks like I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets. Then snatch pulls, 4 heavy sets, and 4 Eric's jump pad single leg activity. That's what I did.
I'm wondering.
You know what I should have done is gone try to find what day is it today? May or April 30th?
April 30th.
It would be really cool is to go back to age 26 on that day and see. Anyways, so that's what I did when I was 26.
I was wondering, were there the proto versions, like the philosophical questions, like were there little notes below that, like, why am I doing speed strength right now?
Let's see. I think at that time I probably was doing some contemplation, right? Of how does this fit into fitness? Why do that? But it looks like I did it. Looks like I did a similar style of workout a week prior. Looks like January 29th I did something similar too. So I probably was in some form of linear progression of that strength speed idea, I think. Yeah. So, anyways.
I just found my WOD book in the basement not too long ago from like 2011, 2012 when I was doing CrossFit football and the SWAD and the DWAD, or the SWAD and the DWAD, the strength WOD and the daily WOD. And yeah, fun to go back and
The WODs.
Yeah. Crazy times.
Good times. Good times. All right, we're on to part 2.
Yes. Experience.
Mm.
Experience and fitness. So obviously, experience has been a topic that we've talked about quite a lot in previous episodes. And James, I know you've personally talked about that quite a bit. So
yeah, with regards to physical expression and coaching experience,
right.
How it ties in.
So just a quick refresher for people of like how we're framing this. Basically, in philosophy, there for a long time was a question about where does our knowledge come from? Is it solely from experience? Are we blank slates? I think I forgot to mention this last time, but Steven Pinker, is the book called The Blank Slate? I want to say it is, or something similar.
Yeah, I've heard this reference upcoming, but I can't remember the book.
Where he basically talks about, in sort of a modern day cognitive psychology sense, how we are not in any way, shape, or form purely blank slates. There's a lot of data we get from experience, but there's a whole slew of innate, whether you want to call it innate knowledge or certain functions of our brain that make it such that we're able to even interpret and process that data. So, this really goes back to Plato and Aristotle. Plato famously thought that there's a lot that we learn from experience, but there's a lot of things like logic and math and geometry, and I guess we could call it theology back then, but of course it's not, it's ancient Greece, so it's not monotheistic theology, morality, all these different things, whereas Aristotle was pretty closely aligned with the notion of modern empiricism. He was a scientist and things like that, so drawing more heavily from experience.
Yeah. Well, we'll reference that book inside of it. I also want to make mention that experience is the first, it has 10 letters, and it's the first 10 workouts that we get new CCP coaches to do when they come into the CCP program. Yeah. It's called experience. It's called the OPEX experience. I guess higher order, we could have called it OPEX experience, but the double P is just jammy, jams the brain, jams the tongue. So we called it OPEX experience.
Yeah, and I mean that gets to a point that we've talked about philosophically before, where it's one thing to look at a workout on a piece of paper, to program it for someone, but to actually feel it in person and to you
Yeah.
know
Yeah, we do
have
that too. Yeah, we do that too. Um, well, I do it because I know that it opens up it opens up good questions for the coach. So maybe this lends into stuff we'll discuss today. But the like the doing of it, um, if if good intentions are inside of the experience, and then there's questions asked on the other side, it makes people go, "Wow." When I share how I felt with it, and then I see others share how they felt about it, everyone is really different. That's the biggest aha moment, is not only like, where do I sit in this thing, but this recognition, if I want to pass that information on, is like, holy crap, like not everyone's going to feel it the same way I do, you know? So that's the deepest reason behind it, is to give people this aha moment, right? That it's like, you're very unique, and let's honor that. Like, this is what you're capable of right now. This is why you felt what you did, but everyone else is going to be slightly different than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting practical on the ground thing that I talk about with Brandon, fairly regularly. It's this notion of like, on the one hand, of course, like metabolically, most humans are going to get more of a response from a 1 minute all out bike test than they are from um, a 1 minute leisurely walk. But that being said, within that, there's this, there, like you said, there's these ranges of experiences, and just practically as a coach, there's always this question of like, Brandon and I will have this discussion about, well, put yourself in the client's shoes and try to think about how they feel. But of course, what something is going to feel like for me in training is going to be quite different from what it is for someone else. So just that balance of like, what is objectively true for humans, generally speaking, metabolic pathways, and then like subjectively, what about this person? So
Yeah. 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 I continue that story on. I love the thoughts you guys are having on that. I continue that story on, which brings back to why I love fitness, because the training practice of it generally reveals what is exactly happening. So if you continue to do it with repetition, consistency, awareness, etc., you come to an understanding as to how that affected the person, right? So yeah, in one case scenario, it's very different. 20 people, not really sure, but let's just keep repeating that, and then eventually we'll see how it gets more and more individualized, right? Yeah, yeah, I like that.
so the central question we're going to be asking here is, what's the ultimate source of our knowledge? Is it mainly experience? Is it experience plus some innate knowledge or instinct that we have? And tying this question into fitness and health that we discussed last time, there's this question of, are there any aspects of our knowledge of fitness and health that are innate, instinctual, and what are the implications of that? And then what do we learn from experience? And as we'll talk about, one of the interesting things that we ended on last time was, for as much as we've talked about experience and as much as you've talked about experience, we actually ended the last episode by saying, to a large extent, what you need to know in fitness is already inside you, in terms of, the primal movement patterns. A human instinctively knows how to run, they know how to walk, they know how to bend, jump, squat, all these different things. And experience merely serves in a certain way as a refinement of that. It'll help you do it better, as you encounter new terrain and other things like that. But the basics of fitness are kind of there biologically, inside you. So today, a really interesting question that we'll get to is like, what contributions is experience making, and how do we balance that with what is inside of us?
Yeah, I had a good time. I had a good time after the last podcast on that, just thinking about where I went to think about it was, I always use the lens of, you know, in the presence of current culture and environment, imagine that what is, because remember, I still believe it's highly, what we're talking about with fitness. We need to be better with this, Robbie, over time with words, but it does also imbibe this concept of physical activity, daily movement, and I think when you add those words to it, then you can say, as I was mentioning in my lens, I have a real cool time over the past couple of weeks thinking about that is, you know, how about multiple different environments, that someone is born into, and how much is that pull around the culture and the environment at the current time and year, that they're born into. How much does that determine, what they think they know or what they come to know with regards to physicality and movement. And I just want to make mention of that it's a good place for people to contemplate and go think about, a young child in a tribe in South America. How about a child in a impoverished community in some area in Africa? How about you know an affluent, highly accessible community to, let's call it, everything today, somewhere else? Just and then use that as an idea in 2021 and say, in the year 1642, what was the culture and the environment that led to, again, the same thing, right? Like, what do they come to know that they are physicality? It could have been kicking a ball around in the street or stickball. I'm not sure what the games were back then, but you get my point. There was no wheels then. Pushing wheels,
Right.
well, there's wheels, but you get my
Wheels.
point. So, so, and then I also uh, wrote this story in my head, a fitness fable of sorts, that said, this. I try not to create any timelines on it, but I wrote this story of this Tarzan-like figure who was born and captured all this knowledge that was necessary and whatever education was needed for it, but never had any access to what is considered the fitness movement today. And then when he was 72 years of age, he comes back to this new age society, and he goes to a park, right? And he's like, "Oh, that resembles some of the things that I do," And and then multiple people come over, like, "How did you get so not fat and so good at pull-ups?" And he goes, "What are pull-ups?" Right? Like that. That's how I it makes me pause on that concept of experience and what we're born with. It's largely, I think, culture and environment and what we're born into, but still there's that biological yearn, I think, of navigating this environment through movement, and at what intensity and what rate for what purpose. And it used to be to get food and to maybe strengthen oneself for protection of community, protection of family, or etc., or to build things, right? And you didn't even know you were strengthening to build things, but you figured it out. It's like, geez, when I throw the spear 700 times a day, my shoulder hurts, boss. It's always like, throw spear 5 times per day. And the old guy's like, what? You know? Anyways, so I had lots of thoughts based upon that, and I appreciate it. It was a good contemplation.
Yeah, no, I did too, and I was, in a certain sense, it almost kind of goes back to the Platonic idea of like, um, experience serves to awaken these things within us, but it is not necessarily the source of these things.
Mm.
We are merely recollecting, in a certain sense, what we already know. Now, again, like we're talking more like know-how, instinct. We're not
Yeah.
talking like
Yeah.
conceptual knowledge or something like that. You couldn't like no human without studying at the college level could most likely be able to describe how they're able to run,
Yeah.
the mechanics
Yeah.
of it, and the biology and the metabolic pathways, but they know
Uh-huh.
how to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then
And our joints and bones and reflective mechanisms and everything is set up for it.
right.
We didn't, anyway, yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, and then that's a really interesting question you posed too about, so all this stuff is within us, and then in what environment does it get expressed, right? Like, so why is it that the Maasai are, great runners, and then Nordic countries tend to, not universally, of course, but Hopthor and Katrin, David's daughter, and all
Yeah.
these a culture of strength and strong men and strong women. Is it just the weather?
Yeah.
Is it language? Is it culture? What
Mhm.
what leads to interest in these different things and expression? Is it genetic mutations surrounding different metabolic pathways or production of muscle, or are those just famous people we know from those? You know what I mean? Like, what are the conditions that lead to that?
Yeah.
It's an interesting
Yeah.
question.
Oh, it is. I have lots on that particular topic, actually, the Icelandic female culture and strength, and I posit some ideas based upon um, those females being born into a culture that in previous times, if you go back and look at the you know civilization of Iceland and the government changes in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the robust amount of data that they have on the population and how things operated and et cetera, it does make sense that you get the Annie times 65, right? And of course, that needs to be stretched on what I mean by that, but um, there's certainly the Annie-esque, right? And then we can ask a couple questions. Was it Annie that did it all? It's like, oh, it's like the 4 minute mile, right? It's like, oh, that's doable. Then we can all do it. I think it was bound to happen as a form of female physical expression meeting, like, all worlds meeting perfectly, right? The being born into a culture that created or warrants this, and then it's just showing its head, and then having the opportunity. It all comes together with Annie missing the ring muscle ups in 2009, and then it just spawning out this unbelievable, what I think was bound to happen, of something you just can't turn your back on. It's just, there's something there, right? So I got lots to speak on that. I'm not sure how it ties into the experience conversation, but it's fairly cool to think about, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties into it in the sense of, like, we're talking about, okay, we have these innate instinctual pieces, and then how do those ultimately get expressed, and then what culture, depending on your experience and the life you live, what leads to, again, one culture having maybe not very much interest in strength stuff whatsoever, and another
Yeah.
culture being much more interested in running and things like that. And
Yeah, thank you. Because I was wondering as I was mentioning, it's like, why are we discussing this? It is that, I think it's the combination of the conversation of or questioning, is it only innate versus culture, or was it both? And that's, I think, what I'm saying is uh, epigenetics, which is really the combination of those two. um, there's something in there, like, i.e., there's something in the water, you
right.
know. Icelandic water is quite good, by the way, but there's something there. And I think that's why what we're discussing, is it only just this, like, you're just born to be that way and come into it? But my feeling is there's a nice balance between the culture and the environment in which that gets seeded, and then it's just a beautiful combo.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking about after last episode that relates to what we were just talking about is, this notion of, if these capacities are, innate within us, and these are instincts, it seems inevitable to me that with repeated experience through the generations, just like humans want to get better at anything, it'll eventually be the case. I don't think any of us can pinpoint exactly in human history when this happened, but like, oh yeah, lifting rocks is pretty cool. I want to get better at that. And then, you know what? I'm going to bring that to my shoulder. Do you know what I mean? Like it,
Yeah.
and then here we are with, med ball cleans and
Yeah, but it was all about intentions. I think at that point, I thought back to it. It was like, this is the thing, like, when that did happen, whether they called it a rock or lifting or like became self-evident, is like, wow, I can lift that thing up, and I felt these like, that was really challenging. They could have been thinking, oh, that was like when I tried to build my home, or that's like when my wife talked about having a baby, or that's when I, ate those shitty leaves for 3 days. I couldn't push my poop out, whatever it was called. They're like, but I could tell you what didn't happen. What didn't happen is that they were like, how can I tell everyone about this? How can I broadcast this? That's what didn't happen. That's the thing. There's so much inside that story of like, I just discovered this thing, and this is what it feels like. But they didn't go running, to tell the town. They didn't go run into town. They're like, I lifted that rock, and can we somehow paint on the walls, the fact that I lifted the rock, right? Can we tell everyone about it? And can I get something from that? Like, I think I want everyone to know that I lifted the rock. This is 2021, right? It's like, like you joke about, it didn't happen if it's not on Instagram, right? It's like, it doesn't matter. But it did happen, it did happen. And it's just too bad we don't have in physical culture a lot of, I think his name is Terry Todd, I believe, and his wife has done a phenomenal job with physical culture, historical physical culture referencing from, I think it's University of Austin or University of Texas in Austin. I apologize if I'm messing that up, but they did a wonderful job of that particular thing, Robbie, of going back and saying like, did we experience those physical things, and what was the connection and the reason to it? And my whole point is that it's just different. The broadcasting of it is not as important.
But I guess I'm curious, and you would certainly know more than I would on this.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it was solely for functional purposes, like just for building a home? Like, I mean, part of me thinks at least some of it had to come from just, for lack of a better term, dicking around,
Yeah.
climbing on a rope or lifting up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Playing.
Yeah. Play, physical challenges. That partner's right up against, you call it dicking around, but I just because I read about it the other day, and sorry, I'm not going to sidewind it, but the importance of gossip. Gossip was a big part of evolutionary behavior, right? As to how you kind of figure out how people are acting, and what Robert Sapolsky talks about it really intricately in terms of how all those primates kind of did their own versions of gossiping. Anyways, but it's the same thing I believe in this, what you call dicking around, it's called play, right? So we put it in a nicer term. By the way, dicking around, does that sound weird?
In all reality, I did not mean that in any pejorative way. just trying to see if people were still listening out there.
I think dicking around actually did possibly happen in some male locker rooms of some particular sports. Not that I would know.
Yeah.
But I to your point, I think play is there, right? It's and this is good because it's leading us down this idea of roughhousing and young, just to go on this one, young boys at play. that in itself is, I find a fascinating. Like I'm very empathetic to the moms I see, and the moms I talk to, and the moms I consulted, and they're like my boys, right? And they talk about like they can't leave them alone in the home, like age 10 and 12. They leave them alone in the home. They'll come back. They'll be like the shit kicked out of one another,
Yeah.
and that's not always the case. But my whole point is that there's something in that, right? It's like, did they, at 2 years of age, they see their parents like, battling each other? It's like, no, it's actually really nice homes, right? Did they go to school and see this ripping of eyes all the time? It's like, no. So what is that, right? It's like it's a physical expression of roughhousing, right? Which, if you, depending upon behavioral psychologists and developmental psychologists, they would say it's helping you develop your brain, right? Personal space, security, what you can and cannot do, your own capabilities. You see that? That's it's an experimentation of being able to figure out what you are capable of. Because you don't have the prefrontal cortex to be like, this is what I'm capable of, right? It's like I'm just navigating, really just reaching out and kicking and throwing, just kind of figure out what, how I relate in this environment. To sound really generalist on it, but yeah, the play point you hit on is powerful. Yeah, because
Yeah, and
inside of play is this. It has this nice intention to it. You know what I mean? Well, I feel it. It's like you're being physically expressive, and there's an enjoyment and an expression and a creativity that's connected to it. And I just really, I don't know, it just, I hear nice songs in the background when people say play.
yeah, I mean it's activity that has a purpose, but as you're doing it, I mean, maybe it has a purpose, but for most kids, they don't. Of course, they think of it as, or I mean,
Yeah,
it's inherently kind of purposeless. It's not for any particular end, but that is precisely what's so enjoyable about it. Is it
yeah,
just doing it for its own sake?
yeah. And I mean, we all feel this, right? Humans gather 25,000 of us to watch the basketball players play. Right now, there's a lot of other reasons why we're there, including the hats and the popcorn. But we when we see it, we're attracted to it, right? It's like these individuals expressing themselves physically, just trying to figure shit out. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I love the. There's a great book on it too, which talks about that intricate period of time too, between 6 and 10 years of age, and what play does to uh, uh, growth factors in the brain. Very powerful, really super powerful. Um, where I would even say, I get on that horse and and ride that pony, if that's the right terminology, as far as possible, of pushing this concept of physical empowerment to young kids, right? At that age is just so important. Anyways, yep, that's pulling back to. I also took down the note of recollecting. I don't know if that's going to come back and center us, but that was a great word you used, the Platonic concept of, you know, does it just come about because we're just like pulling it, we're just pulling it out, of like what is. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, like kids don't need to be taught how to roughhouse with each other. I mean, they need to be maybe pulled back by their parents so they don't bash each other's faces in, because that can happen sometimes. But you know what I mean? Like they
Oh yeah,
they they
no,
they know about how to, assuming they are given sufficient food, water, shelter, all the rest of that stuff, like they will learn how to crawl. They will
yeah,
learn how to walk. They will learn how
yeah,
to squat.
yeah,
They will learn how to push and
yes,
different
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. Because my daughters did it, and my daughters still do it, and just so we don't think I'm just saying just in the boys and play and physicality. I'm not going to. It's just like people,
Yeah.
we all have that in us, and we just got to remember that it's a form of play. It's a form of figuring out how you navigate this thing, now. And to bring you back to a stark pessimistic reality, look at what physical expression is to a lot of adults today. you know I shed some tears when I think about that, how constructed it is, how it just, there's not as much of that like physical expression and creativity and enjoyment inside of movement.
Yeah, and I think one thing I think about there that I often wonder about is going back to the point about like play and how did we come up with, oh yeah, one group of people likes running a lot, so they start figuring out how to run better.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then, one group really likes strength stuff, so we figure out how to do strength stuff.
yeah,
And like, I feel like that's just an inevitable part of the process. And then, where does that all go wrong? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
we're
I don't
going
know
to
if it
be
was
experimenting, and
Yeah, I don't know if it was inevitable, because the way I thought, or maybe you can clarify my argument on that wording. But yeah, because we ran though, but we ran. We didn't know we were running. That makes sense. Like we were just, it's like we had to go after the animals, or we had to, get to school on time, or whatever. Getting to school on time probably not one, but then it's the Cooper Institute, And then they connect that to like, oh wow, we're really weak as a population. Oh wow, running is hard. And they're like, aha, we run because it's exercise and it's sweat and it'll keep us from being fat. So I think there was a long stretch in time where running, you know, because what's his name, Lieberman, I believe, who wrote Exercised, also wrote a previous book to that talked about we were born to run. Like it's in us to be able to do it. Now, whether we express it. To your point on like, you're interested in well, how do we just get to come to lift things, And I think it's the same. I think it was the same story, but I was caught on the word of inherent um, to it.
Yeah. So yeah, apologies for any confusion. Let me see if I can clear it up. So I'm talking like, let's even go back before culture. Let's go back 10,000 years, like roughly speaking.
Damn agriculture.
Messed everything up.
Damn you.
I could be wrong. This is armchair theorizing, but gosh, I feel like there's some decent reasoning for believing something like this. Like humans love to experiment and figure out new ways to do things and to play around with things. I think through the course of human evolution and experience, I'm sure not for the purpose of building a house, not for the purpose of hunting something down. At some point, someone was playing around with running. It's like, oh, I really like that. How can I do that better? Or lifting something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is through that, those are the proto versions of then, what eventually becomes very long way down the line, strength sport or endurance sport or other things like that. So what I'm saying there is, not necessarily about the modern turn to, running to not make us fat or strength sport to not make us fat, but like it's inevitable that we would start experimenting with these different capabilities that we have. Like, oh, I can squat. Well, I'm not just doing this just to poop. I'm not just doing this to sit around the campfire. Like, people will play, they'll dance, they'll do other things and figure out, oh, I can do this or that or the other thing. So, I wonder to what extent this natural play and experimentation that led to these different things eventually, at what point does it kind of go off the rafters and we get a GHD bench press?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, that'll always be the big question. At what point? I'm sure there's a lot of iterations along the way. And that's the whole idea of the conversation on, for all of us that are alive today in 2021, asking this big question, like, do we need a whole ton of experience with all that practice of seemingly really creative things to figure out how to, improve our human potential, our physical potential? And I think where I sit on it. I don't think we do. I don't think we need all that what seemingly looks like super creative things. I think it's just a facade, in my opinion, to moving away from the basics that are required for it. It doesn't make it wrong. Doesn't make it not helpful to some people for enjoyment, right? Purposes. You can go back to our pleasure one to discuss what people may derive from physical expression.
Right.
But that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is something that can happen in other areas of endeavor too. I mean, there's a very similar thing happened in philosophy where, people were asking good big questions for a long time, and then now philosophy is not all, but like there's a lot of just, minutia type questions that, you're wondering like, wait, what? Like we started this whole endeavor asking like, what is a good life? And now we're asking about like, do chairs really exist? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, what the what? And obviously there are plenty of interesting and, worthwhile modern philosophical questions around what is consciousness and animal ethics and all these different things. But there's a whole lot of minutia that, yeah, I think there is a tendency in humans, no matter the endeavor, to kind of like, okay, we opened up this new can of worms. There's some cool stuff inside, and then like go all the way down until it's like, it's run its course too far. And maybe that's kind of where we're at with creativity and fitness, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps we're in the 26th episode of asking that question.
Right.
We're deep in.
Right. Speaking of which, that's meta right there.
Do you hear that? Those in 2199. Yeah, I think that I wrote down there's a that based upon the roughhousing of young boys concept. I think there's a yearning for physical expression that's inside that is human, and otherwise, I mean, why would we have all those things that like I talked last time about the opportunity for maximal contractions? Like, why actually have the ability, right, to think about that, to create so much pressure, right? There's no there's no way we got to pass a turd that's that that's that dry.
Speak for yourself, James. Just
I mean,
kidding.
you could it was like, wow. So you're telling me is that we need to get to 45 years of age to develop enough reps because we're going to be so dehydrated. We need to pass turds that are like yay wide and like rocks. It's like, oh, that's an evolved life right there.
We have our trailer
No.
for this episode, by the way.
And we're in a period too of a cognitive revolution, I like to call it. Like psych and cognition is really, really been big over the past so many years and a long period of time, right? And it doesn't mean that physicality is lost, but physicality and the concept of it is, as I said, we don't need to move as much anymore. We don't need to exercise, right? It doesn't mean that people are still not doing it, but we don't need to. But in culture, seemingly, it's kind of really important to learn things and to be smart as possible, right? And then this is what we're dealing with, right? We're at a point in time, we're having conversations, we're philosophically talking about where these things come from. Yet we do have to recognize that it's just not common conversation to really dig hard on the physical, what we're given physically and how to work with that, inside the new culture and environment. And like I always say, let's just get on with it, right? Like, it's okay, so we don't need to. Okay, great. What are you going to do about it? Because you can pass that big dry turd. Like, you're capable of it, you know? Um, I'll come up with a better example, like I talked about for standards. Remember, we'll go back to that one to tie in some logic to this, right? 2 times body weight deadlift and run for 2 hours straight, upright, right? As if you're not upright. Be upright on land, across land, 2 hours straight. So if you don't remember that, that's what I propose as like something you could just say, like, is there something we can all wrap our hands around of, like, what we can do for somewhat of a higher level physical expression, maximal physical expression for most humans, right? And I think we just sell that super short, where it's like, oh, just getting out of bed and thinking real hard and learning things is a big, to your point, is a big life. That's the good life, right? It's like, well, where is it that you need to be physically challenged? Why isn't that in the booklet of a good life? Right? Like, you need to go out and physically challenge yourself with the things that you have innate. Because we're saying the same thing cognitively, right? You're born with this brain, you can do all these things, you have all this potential. Go out there and do it every day through vocation, challenging conversation, argument, etc. Physicality, just garden. Really, right? Or just high intensity interval, that thing. You see where it falls on that. That's where. So we just got to be okay with that's where it is, right? And this makes us stuck with this question of, like, well, how much real experience do we need to understand that maximal physical expression, right? And geez, I don't know. I don't think you need lots whatsoever, because it's inside of you to do it, you know. And then we can get into the weeds and something more, I guess, intricate for us, you and I and those around us, probably those listening too, is like, well, now secondary to that, how much experience of that and conversation, et cetera, and physical experience is needed to pass on this information to others, right? Now it ties in the coach and the client, and how much experience does someone need to teach it, and especially if it's bumping up, as we mentioned, Robbie, against this innate thing. So if it's an innate and you can do it, how much do you really need to teach someone if it's inside of them to do, And that's where culture comes in. Today, people need to be taught those things I was just talking about. You spend many waking hours from 9 to 3 as a child for many, many years saying, you need to be smarter, you need to be smarter, you need to be smarter. How many of those hours of the day is socially accepted for people to be like, you need to be fitter, you need to be fitter, you need to be fitter? It's like, oh, don't, no, you can't say that. No, that's too much of a burden.
Doesn't make as much money unless it's sports.
True. Yeah, that's true. Sad truth, but true.
I think there's probably also some element of, there are probably many different cultural aspects, but that kind of mind-body dualism and, the mind or the soul being the higher part and
Yes.
the body being the animalistic stuff that we need to shed this mortal coil, or, you know what I mean? Like kind of leave that stuff behind. And yeah.
For sure. Yeah, you raise a really good point for us to think about over time. Where does that come from? And is it from that base support of that? Is that where it arises? And if it is, I think you and I need to jam a little harder on that.
Yeah, again, there are probably multiple causes, but I think that probably is one of them.
Okay, well, for another time.
Yeah, that'd be
yeah, good to take that down for notes. Yeah, so how about that experience thing?
So I wrote down experience can refer to a number of different things. It can mean sensory experience. It can refer to, momentary visual, auditory, tactile perception. So fitness example here would be, I feel the weight of the barbell in my hand. So like when we say experience, with philosophy, we're always trying to drill down into like, what exactly do we mean? Are we equivocating about this term? Are we actually talking about what we mean? So, again, for that fitness example, it could be like, what does it feel like to bench press? What does it feel like to run? And that can be multiple different feelings within that. What is the feeling of my feet touching the ground, or, my innate aerobic capacity, or, buildup of, or getting a muscle cramp or something like that. And then another way you can talk about an experience is some sort of singular encounter of a particular kind. So the 1 minute stationary bike test was an excruciating experience. And there we're not talking about not necessarily any one element of it, although your lungs burning are probably, well, your legs cramping up too. It's the whole shebang. It's the whole thing together.
The light closing.
It was saying, come into the light. And I was like, no.
No.
And then I finished. And then it can also mean, and this relates to both fitness clients and fitness coaches, proficiency. So it could be that someone has a large number of encounters with a certain activity. So we say someone's an experienced power lifter or Olympic lifter or marathon runner or something like that. So those are all the different notions of experience, and
makes you think about what people actually know from that, without this context of, is it a skill that's making the system more efficient and better? So because experience, maybe this is just adding to it, or not. Let me know if it's not, and we can keep moving. But do you feel that in there has to be like some judgment as to what is positive to the experience? Like, is the experience possibly leading to like less efficiency? So someone is doing stuff over and over, but it's not actually getting better. So that's why I was saying the context of skill development and improvement in efficiency and et cetera would then warrant, us saying, oh, that's experience. That's an experienced lifter, to your point, right? So maybe there's people that have been lifting for 20 years, but it's dog shit and they're actually not getting better. Are they experienced? Not sure if it colors it or diminishes the concept of experience.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know that we have a phrase for or similar phrase for experience, but there's always that distinction between practice and perfect practice, or
Yeah.
better practice or something like that. So we could maybe make a different notion of experience where one is, just has engaged in the activity repeated number of times. I'm sorry. Gosh, I wish I remember the name of this guy. I'll have to ask Brandon. I was just thinking of there's this Olympic lifting guy, like an amateur Olympic lifting guy, who like as he's doing the lift, he's like, "Goddamn motherfucker!" Like as he's doing the lift, and like the lift is like not that great, but he's like famous at these Olympic lifting competitions. And I just your comment made me think of this guy. Someone who has years of like actually just physically
Correct.
doing the lifts, but it's
Yeah.
dog shit.
Yeah.
And he yells and screams as he does it. Anyway, sorry, my apologies.
No, I get it.
I'm gonna have to see if I can find that. But anyway, like we can make, as philosophers do, a distinction between someone who has just like encountered the same thing over and over again, yet has not gotten better at it, versus someone who has become more efficient. I see what you're saying, like more efficient at what they're trying to do.
Yeah. So I guess we could say that experience has to have, we're going to make the presumption, if you're okay with that, we can make the presumption that inside that experience, it's for the purpose of leading to an increase in order or less chaos in the system, some kind of ordering to make the system more efficient and better.
Presumably, although you get really interesting questions when you think about like, I don't know, whatever human endeavor you want, like someone getting better at badminton. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
more efficient for what? Is always going to be the question. Like,
oh yeah, for
more,
sure. Yep. Yeah, that has to. You are right. It has to have some context of experience in what, Yeah. But use powerlifting, physicality. So I just thought that was important.
Yeah. Another thing I was going to mention with regard to empiricism in general that I think will be relevant for what we discuss is any knowledge you gain from experience tends to have the following three characteristics. It's fallible, so it's never 100% certain.
Right.
So, we used to think the Earth was the center of the universe, but now we know it's not. But there's so many others. I mean, gosh, the people who think like,
your snatches were good, and then you went to a competition,
right? Or the people who did it today who think like, oh yeah, I feel like in every generation it's like, oh yeah, all those people before, like they made all those mistakes and like, but we figured out, like I remember ever since a young age I've always thought like, what's going to be the smoking of our generation? Like what's the thing we think like, is it? Yeah. So it's fallible.
I think it's attention. I think we're in the attention economy.
Probably.
Sorry to cut you. Sort of set you off on.
Oh no, you're totally fine. Yeah, I would say that's probably a major candidate. But by the time we realize it, we won't be able to pay attention to it anymore. Now that's some meta.
That's why I chose it. Attention is the new smoking. Period.
It was sitting for a while, but now
I know. No, we had to make it something, as you said, more meta for
that. Knowledge we get from experience is contingent as opposed to necessary. So what do I mean by that? So in philosophy, that just means like it could have been some other way. So humans might have been able to walk on water. We might have been able to process sonar. We might have been able to see near infrared light. But as a matter of fact, we can't. But there could never be a square that's also a circle. That's what philosophers would call a necessary truth. And then lastly, from experience, things must constantly be corrected and refined. And why? Because the senses tend to generally be not entirely deceptive, but they can lead astray. So like a bent stick in water is just a silly, easy example, right? So we have to correct what it is we're thinking. So the relevance of this for philosophy, but also for what we're talking about, is a lot of previous thinkers, philosophers, and theologians wanted to take things like morality or math or logic or geometry or theology precisely out of the realm of experience, because if you have them in the realm of experience, they are contingent, not necessary. They are fallible, not infallible. They are, sensory and must constantly be refined. So, you know, just thinking about that impulse that sometimes humans have to like pull things out and say, no, this stands, over and above experience, and therefore must be necessary. It's like, no, if we're saying this comes from experience, it has to consistently be refined. It can always be changed, and um, yeah, it's contingent.
Yeah, yeah. It's also a wonderful story example in there of that beauty between the truth and which we're trying to derive from science and artistry of experience and trying to pull all the things together with creativity and just try and work against one another but together. I love that. So within your words of fallible, contingent, and refinement, which is what I took down as three of them. um, it's almost like guardrails, really to make sure that you're in that right tension zone. So I really enjoy that. I also like the fact there's three, um, and makes it easy for people to think about it. And there's another thought that I have based upon that we probably, if we want to bring it into fitness and fitness experience, you and I should come up with um, less philosophical language and more real world language for those three areas that can help people day to day with language around these three things so that they could learn themselves. I'm not questioning people's ability to understand the terms, but fallible, contingent, and refinement, we could turn it into something that, any human on the street who learns about physical expression goes, well, I know what I know about my physical experience because of these three things. Here's the three, the three things that I use all the time to ensure, this is possibly somewhat true, right? Like if my experiences are leading to anything that's worthwhile for me, being helpful. So, anyways, just that's another thing I thought about in the practice of transitioning from those words and then moving it into like, how can my wife understand that? Like, why can't she get those three words injected that allows her to go, yeah, right. You know,
No,
that's
it's a good point. I think I have a few examples just as you were saying that
okay.
may potentially be useful. Um, so fallible, let's go to our standard punching bag. Um, whether it's CrossFit or Orange Theory or what have you, just any fitness system you think of is not the way, the light, and the truth. It must always answer to experience, and to the extent it does, okay, keep at it. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, that was CrossFit's initial charge against other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an example there. Contingent. So let's take a fitness example there. It could be the case that we could sustain a sprint for 60 minutes or 2 hours as humans. That could have been the case. As a matter of fact, due to our evolutionary history, we're not.
Yeah.
But it certainly could have been, and it could have been that we were really sucky at sustaining aerobic activity,
Yeah.
but we're not. So just thinking about like those are facts of who we are. They're not necessary facts about who we are, but those are facts about who we are. And then what do we do with that? Um, and then must constantly be corrected and refined. Like we've talked about, the senses can deceive, and what we feel can deceive. So, that feeling you get after a WOD or an Orange Theory session or what have you, of like, oh my God, that was so great. How do I do more of that? Like, yes, that's a interesting, cool biological signal, but we've got to pull back from the senses a little bit there and say, am I supposed to be doing that over and over and over again and constantly searching for that next high? So those are a couple that I could think of that might help people.
Nice. Yeah. I wrote down any system might work. Just try to run all out for 60 minutes and don't forget intentions.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
way to put it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. That's good guardrails for people. It allows some see where experience fits into that, which can be threatening for some, right? Because I mean, a lot of us propose to have answers for individuals in their physical expression experience and learning. I thought this was going to be the answer. I thought these were the answers. So
Yeah, and I mean, but I think that's it's partly going to be the responsibility of the coach, but it's also the responsibility of the client. Like, don't put shit up on a pedestal. You know
yeah,
what I mean? We've all done it, but like,
yeah,
and it's a natural human propensity, but like, you have to take responsibility for, like, nothing is necessarily the one true final complete answer. Like, there are things that very much lean more in one direction, but you have to be open to, like, hey, what I once thought can change and be revised and
yeah.
things like that.
The fallible point, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
One other point on empiricism with relation to your point on guardrails that I thought would be useful and kind of connects back to what you in a certain way are saying about the current fitness landscape. Empiricists and people who put experience first basically say we have no knowledge of a particular subject outside of sensory experience. So if someone says we have a particular concept like God or fairies or fate or the stars influencing our lives, the empiricist will always come back and say, like, how does this answer to experience? Like, from whence did this
mm-hmm.
come? A unicorn is like, you saw a horse, you saw a horn on something, and then like you put the two together in
Well,
imagination, but you don't actually see something
yeah,
in experience. And this isn't the exact same thing, but a connection I thought of with relation to fitness is kind of what you've been saying, where it's kind of like, okay, well, we have the GHD bench press, we have all this creative stuff that kind of like was born out of things that we can innately do, squat, press, all these other things. And then a question that you could ask in fitness is like, how does this answer to fitness expression? How does this answer to true fitness experience? Like, is this just uh rhetorical flourish isn't the right word, not rhetorical. Is it just fitness flourish? Is it just icing on the cake? Is it sprinkles or something like that really has no empirical connection anymore to what it is we're trying to do with physical expression? So I think that notion from empiricism is at least somewhat connected to what you've been saying with regard to, hey, how does the GHD bench press answer to experience? How does the kipping pull up answer to what should be physical expression? And like you were saying, this notion of guardrails of like, we can't go too far down the creative side and lose sight of the basic physical expression side. So anyway,
yeah,
those thought I had.
yeah. And I think that leads to coaches recognizing that you're going to do a lot of fitness expression for yourself just to learn what is stupid and to learn what is useless and to learn what is folly. It'll consistently. Do you know what I'm saying? So you still have to experience it. I would say, as of someone who's going to be teaching others about what they need in experience to get the aha moments of physical expression. So yeah, you need to do the bench press, 135, wasn't it 135 with reps at GHD? Anyways, you got to do that. You got to do it to go, yeah, for someone with an asymmetry and the psoas and iliacus on one side, that's a recipe for some torsion on L4, L5 that I don't want to deal with. So how do you make that statement, right? You got to try the bench. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you can't just think about it or sense it or feel it. You got to do that for you to be in the position to teach others about the guardrail. So I guess what's inside that too is maybe there needs to be an experience on behalf of a coach, almost sacrifice more or less in order for us to be able to educate and to make people more aware of what these things are that they're gonna have to put in place as guardrails for their physical expression, so they can go what's useful and what's really just a crock of shit that is not useful whatsoever for me over time, regardless of the whole intention thing. But but in terms of practice of physical expression, constantly, yeah, I think that's what I think about for where coaches fit in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, and coaches, yeah, in a certain sense, are the sacrificial lamb that can help, at least currently, ordinary folks figure out
Yes.
creatively
Yeah.
design things that are useless from things that seem less creative but are
Now,
useful. The
now
60-minute bike test versus battle ropes.
yeah. Now on the back end of that, this is reality. 98% of all fitness professionals don't do the experience that leads to them going, now I did this, you don't need to do this. Instead, it's the opposite. It's like, I did this, I got popular doing it, people really liked me, they really liked when I did it, therefore it's going to keep you motivated by you doing the same thing. And I'm going to cherry pick research that gets piled on top of you doing that and wrap a whole bunch of community and culture of needs and wants around it. And here you go. You've got current fitness today. So as much as I'd love to make that seem utopic, I'm very pessimistic in terms of how that gets passed on to the majority. Would you agree, disagree, or thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think as it's practiced today, certainly with Instagram and other things. Yeah, I think it was the other day on Shark Tank. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine this person is listening, but if they are at any point, I don't mean to, you know, denigrate your fitness device or whatever, and however it is you came about it. But there's something on Shark Tank. This person, she'd come up with like a thing that it's basically it's like a sandbag that mimics like a fire hose rope, or a fire hose, excuse me. And like, okay, yeah, you can do tosses like that, and yeah,
Yeah.
presses, and oh, okay, cool. You raise the roof, exactly. And there's a whole online fitness community around that, and I'm sure she's making a bunch of money from it. But I mean, there's a bunch of different things like that. So yes, I do think that's very prevalent today. A question I did have for you around that I thought would be interesting, both for coaches and clients, is, so you're right, we should go out and experience, as much as we can, but like, where are the guardrails on that, right? Should I be going out and doing the fitness ladies fire hose thing? Should I be
What
going
you signed up for?
Orange Theory? I
That's,
mean,
I don't know. I think that's where we currently are today. We signed up for that, and I don't think that over time there'll be enough intuition or even text and academic literature that would give us some answers. So I think it's up to us sacrificing our minds and bodies, possibly to a certain extent. I think that's the only way we're going to come to some understanding as to what is right and what is the truth and what we do know as being truths inside of fitness. Um, I feel very strongly about that. I know that I'm, going through a story, think of it as like a story that's almost written. And every day that I participate in physical experience and as I grow older, I I want to be that person who tells that particular story of what this will lead to, right? It's just not there's not a lot of people who are having that discussion for multiple different reasons we talked about before: systems, institution, and the market appeal, and the basics around the lack of excitement around the truths, etc. But yeah, I think that's the only way through is for us to sacrifice and to go through that. And I would even say from my experience, which I don't ever have any resentment about or issues with, is going to those really deep levels like I did in CrossFit. That offers aha moments. But I did that. I didn't do it purposely so I could teach others. But now that I'm here, I'm sure as shit happy that I pushed it to that extent, almost to the point where I believe I'll have metabolic and some issues long term. I believe based upon that, but it so I think that's the only way through is to have enough individuals that are willing to speak about those experiences and be vulnerable and brave in that attempt. To be able to say like, I did this, this stupid shit, but doesn't mean you need to do it. And let me tell you why. So I don't think we can rely on us just being, just dilly daddling around and waiting for the data to show up. See, I told you, slow resistance and easy aerobic work is best for most people.
So what you're saying is you and I will be signing up for like a surfboard fitness class with Zumba, and we will be doing it solely for research purposes
Pretty much.
to tell people, hey, this is fun, but a crock of shit when it comes to fitness.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because as I mentioned, there's the 98% other fitness professional who does, hey, I've tried this new thing. You should check it out because it's all about movement. And here, some people may not be able to do this. So here's their accessibility to the movement. That's how now I'm going to sell it, right? Like to the fire rope example, I don't pull any punches with that. That's stupid. That's a bad idea, in my opinion. So you've got to come down to judgment on what's the context around it or the awareness in it. And where I sit, just personally, I hate the mediocre, well, it's going to help people move. It's like, give me a break. Like that's weak in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. But um, so I think we will be participating in those things, i.e. the fire hose, shoulder to overhead classes, mixed with burpees. Of course, burpees are in everything right now. So it's, burpees are inside the Peloton prescription at home
Oh, really?
with
Wow.
little dumbbells. Yeah. Well, they got them off their bike now, um, doing stuff. Good stuff.
Interesting.
So we got to experiment, right? We got to spend the money.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't. I mean, that does make sense to me, at least to a certain extent. Although I do wonder practically, but also epistemologically, like going back to your point you were making earlier about like experience, like is the better fitness coach the one who's been sitting inside basic strength work and basic aerobic stuff for a long time and has a lot of good experience with that, and then occasionally touches like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try CrossFit, see if that has anything in it, Orange Theory, the surfboards, what have you. Or there's another one where you just say, oh, new experiences are all that there is to be had. And like in our current landscape, you could never get deep in anything, right? If you're
Yeah.
trying everything all the time, like you can't get deep in anything because there's
Yeah.
just so much coming around. So I wonder the extent to which like, yeah, we've got to touch it like an OPEX experience. We got to like see it if we haven't before.
Yeah.
But to what extent can we make generalizations once we've done that about the 1,000 or so other things that are just different iterations of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think you're going to have most of your clients show up over the next 30 years that have access, even if they don't think they can or cannot do it, they have access to all these new tools. So that's one thing that fights against it. Secondly, I think that it should be less about the modality and what's inside in terms of the experiences. I think that the coach needs to be the role model of consistency. So it actually will play itself out. If you can go and play with all those other things, I believe, right? Um, and you will just come to a, a resolution with that personally, like you and I have, is like, well, we can only touch that so much because I want to be consistent. So if consistency is the overarching thing, which a lot of, I just keep thinking of the over fat weightlifting coach who sits in the corner at 54 years of age, right, with two rehabilitated knees and talks about health. It's like, come on, right? Like, come on. Tell everyone the truth as to why you choose cycling now as your activity 5 times a week and swimming, right? Like, don't be afraid to discuss what all those experiments to the deep level of expression led to for this definition of longevity and consistency. So if you define consistency as barely hanging on for the last 50 years, we're not talking about the same word here, right? So I think, Robbie, it's less about how much you should delve into that. And I love the way you propose that. Only absolute strength and easy aerobic work. That's all your experiences as a coach. I still do believe that's enough to go on. I do really think that there's enough if people are strong enough in their belief, right? That's all you need. I'll still start with that. But the fact is the culture will have all of these possible modalities as experiences that you can't only, say the truth is here, right? This is the truth. It will get you all of that, because they'll go, how do you know that? So you can add a personal story, or you can add a personal story plus all the other coaches may say the same thing, right? It's like, listen, we know this much to be true, right? We tried this whole thing. And based upon defining health and general health measures doesn't work. So, let me tell you this, right? All you need is absolute strength and easy aerobic work. And there is going to come times 4 weeks down the road, I can tell you in 32 days exactly, actually, the data shows that you're going to say, but Janice is doing that, and you're going to need to have the ability to converse with Janice on that, right? And to come back to my gym and be like, now that's why I do bicep curls, right? Like, so that I think there's a yeah. So the words I hopefully pulled out in that long answer was it's less about the experience and all the various modalities. It's you being aware of the culture as to what questions you're going to get, and secondarily defined by consistency, right? Consistency of experiences, right? Like how powerful is my word if I'm not consistently working out every morning for 2 hours? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to define this concept of my storybook, right? For 15,000 expressions or sessions in a lifetime, right? And what happens if something stops short in there? Well, that's it. Something within it is probably not the right idea because I couldn't continue to do it. So yeah. Anyways, hope to pull something from that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Can you imagine if we went to the surfboard fitness class and we came out and we were like, you know what? That's it.
There's
All of human history with physical expression. That was wrong. We want to be open to new experiences and new ways of thinking. Surfboard fitness. There you go.
Listen, it's far from surfboard fitness, but it does capture a couple of things that I will tell you I personally gone through over the past year with my daughter. Rock climbing. In that there's so much, because surfboard fitness, right? Depending on how it's done, if we all go out and learn how to ride waves and it's in the ocean versus being in class on this mechanical, like, ooh, with Beach Boys playing in the background. I'm sure current like surfboard music is. How bad is that? Anyways, I'm sure it's punk like it is for skateboard shops, right? They still
Probably.
play those, by the way. Those videos, skateboard videos, on in the skate shops.
Oh
With
yeah, I
punk in
totally
the
believe
back.
it.
Man,
I grew up
I'm
with
just like I just stuck there for an hour every time. I shit you not, maybe it's not an hour, but I'm like glued for 10 minutes just watching these physical challenges, unbelievable solutions. Anyways, back to my point. I've been experiencing this in nature, right? I.e., this you know, somewhat natural instinct of just climbing over things and traversing, right, and doing it with my daughter in a constructed manner of ropes and hooks and hanging onto rock and being outside. But it's nature, and like the stuff that I'm developing on my fingers when I'm outside relative to indoors, and what we experienced, we went on our own climbing outside just north here last or a couple of weeks ago, and I had to carry a big pack, because my daughter couldn't carry all the gear. She's carried her water bottle, which is fairly heavy, but carried a big pack, and I had to do lots of lunges and climbing and traversing, right? A lot of pulling on specific weeds to be able to get myself up with the pack, because I couldn't just do it with my lower body. And then we put the pack down, and then we try a bunch of these things, and so you're lifting yourself, right? You're doing resistance against it. My whole point is that I have opened up a deeper appreciation to people trying to create these natural opportunities for individuals, right? Like I know we're making fun of it with surfing class, but I think there is a spot in there for us to open our eyes to what's outside the gym in a natural environment that could give us this deeper connection to our intention around physical expression. I of course compress it down to walk in the sun and lift rocks, but it's not much more than that. You know, that could be really powerful for people. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I wonder about that too. And again, it kind of goes back to that question I was having that I'm still pondering over, like, okay, so climbing things is a natural activity. Humans are able to climb trees and rocks, but like, we didn't evolve with chalk. We didn't, we didn't eventually have these climbing walls where they've got like special little, you know what I mean? Like, but that all seems like a good thing. It's fun to practice. It's a cool new skill. Like, and that happens in many other areas of endeavor where like you take this natural thing and you've morphed it and you give other people access to it in maybe a safer environment or a
Yep.
different way to do it. And like there are examples of that where it seems, virtuous, or at the very least not, certainly not vicious or problematic. And then there's like stuff where it goes off the rails and it's like it's too divorced
Hmm.
from what we were naturally doing. So that is an interesting question to me that I don't know that there are hard and fast general answers for, but I do think about that with physical expression. Like, how far do we pull from where it originally was to something else?
Yep. Gosh, I'm just trying as I keep going here, I'm trying to see how this ties into our overall conversation on experience. Because you proposed some challenging things I spend a lot of time thinking about. Because it lies at the something that's really important to me in terms of your intentions of movement, you know. So
I mean,
I'll just say that I'm down. I just downloaded what you mentioned there. I'm just gonna save it for another area for conversation.
yeah, no, that totally makes
It
sense. I
does,
mean,
but it does. I'll just say it does lend into just making people who are listening to say, just open your eyes to what experience is. That's what I want. You know, to like, how do you come to know what you just mentioned? You know, because I could go on and on about it, about climbing outside because Hannah and I boulder, or locally with nothing. We just walk to it and boulder, right? So now it's like, well, that's a little bit. Those are holds that you got to figure out, right? They're not in place. They're not, so you got to figure out how to create that challenge. So it's I'm just make mention of that, keep trying to figure out what are these as close to primal natural physical expressions as possible, and that will help you tie into the reason behind why we're doing physical activity.
yeah, I think that's a good point. And I guess the connection for me to experience, besides the one that you just mentioned, which is a good one, is this notion that I personally think, and I'm willing to be, you know, wrong on this, but inherent in the notion of us doing any activity that we would naturally do is the notion of play and experimenting and all these different things. Like skateboarding came from somewhere.
Yeah,
BMX biking and rollerblading, like all these things came from somewhere.
yeah,
And it wasn't some supernatural weird force. It was
yeah,
us playing around with these different things. And so through repeated experience, these things came about. And like, just asking the question around how did one area of endeavor go completely awry and another be just a cool way to express yourself in different ways, and just thinking about that. So
yeah. And I love the. I thought about Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox with going back and was it the yeah. Anyways, they were really surprised by his skateboarding ability. Do you remember that?
yeah,
Right. And I thought, what a wonderful way, even if it was intentional or not, what a wonderful way to propose what seemingly looks like, and as well when he was on stage going at it with the guitar, right? Remember Johnny B. Good? I think that's what he was doing, Johnny B. Good, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Just those two, like, how did that audience at that time perceive that? Do you see that? It seemed like gobbledygook, like, oh, how ugly and disgusting that is, right? Meaning like look at him, it's so creative and yet it's loud and boisterous, both the skateboarding and the playing the guitar, right? But you see how it's become this like, I just think about those things. It's a wonderful way for you to understand that in the current time where you are largely dictates how you perceive what these expressions are, right?
yeah.
And
So
and like I love the skateboarding example, man. Another thing for another time, maybe in terms of aesthetics, really, and how that fits in. But just so much freedom and creativity, and like to your point as well, indirectly, why people. I spoke to Ben Kelly, who was Australian, came over in the Northeast, CrossFit coach, been there for a while. I kind of mumbled to him like, "What do people get out of surfing?" And then he explained it to me eloquently, just a couple of minutes, and I was floored by what I did not know in terms of the natural environment and what it offers as challenges. And I just saw this like it gave me goosebumps to think you could honestly go out every day and never get the same challenge Think about that. And think how compressed and reductionist it is to do a bicep curl with a 35-pound dumbbell. You know, see the stark difference in that, you know? And it brings in your point on our love around play and what could be innate to us to just have these physical challenges, you know, and to be able to do that. Um, Anyways, I just find that I appreciate you making me spend some time thinking about that wonderful aha moment of the surf class.
No, yeah, it's a great discussion. It really, yeah, forces one to think about like how
Play.
did, yeah, play.
Yeah. Yeah. And leading to experience and what does play offer. And yeah, it's great. I'm glad it indirectly moved that way. Yeah. Play always makes play, whenever I say it, I don't know why. It's like the little, you know, you open up the box and the dance, the little girls dancing in there. Ding, 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 ding. Like it just gives me happy, you know, happy thoughts. I'm currently watching Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood's depiction brought to Hulu.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is quite the difference from play. That is
Oh,
dystopic.
no, no, no! I'm tying it in. Let me tie it in,
Okay,
Robbie.
okay.
That's unfair. Remember uh, the wife of Fred in the home, wife of the commander. She gives the handmaid the box with the little dancer in the first season. Maybe it's
I haven't seen it yet. I've just seen
oh
trailers. I've
shit.
heard
Okay,
about it.
okay. Well, that's why you don't know. But that
Yeah,
she gave her that, and that sound, you know, she goes to sleep at night with it, and it gives her some. It's just it's an idea of like this little touch on reality. It's actually masochistic on behalf of the woman who gives it to her because she's under this totalitarian regime, you know, inside this house, basically being pillaged and raped and basically used as this like fertile oven, um, and only seen as that. And yet there's this, you know, little ding, 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 you know. Anyways, for those who've seen it, you'll understand what I mean of those nice feelings that come with that word play. Uh, Gosh, I apologize. I took everyone in that area.
no, that's okay.
Okay.
No, play. I mean, yeah, it's got a great association with it, and yeah, we all need to
Yeah,
do more of it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And maybe to summarize or get to our summarizing, maybe that's what we understand around it is this nice balance between culture and what's innate, and this beauty maybe of the triad in that is um, play. You know, maybe play is the third part of the triangle of what's innate and what's culture and environment. And this experimentation of play is maybe the mediator, you know, the manana that kind of balances those things out, where with play and enough quote unquote experience, it can lead you to all these really positive affirmations of what is good physical expression.
Yeah, taking those instincts that we have and putting them into practice and seeing what new things you can come up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that was a good one.
Yeah. Do I hear animals or children?
I hope that's not a child. No, I'm just kidding. That is my dog losing it in the
Is,
background.
is it time for a walk?
Yeah, I
Time
think
to go
so.
play.
It's a beautiful day, so yep,
That
but
dog heard play, and that's all the dog needed. You know,
pretty much.
every time I
So
say it, like, "Burr."
yeah,
You know what play means?
she's agreeing with you, James. She's
Yeah,
like, yes, I agree. So
awesome. I appreciate that. I love the fallible contingent refinement piece to it. I saw a lot of systematics, you know, play out of your conversation today, which was really nice for me personally. I love, you know, having the third eye, I guess, looking at the conversation and just seeing the function being will of a bunch of those things just play out. I really appreciated that. The fact that we got to talk about play fitting in somehow, which I didn't think was going to come up. And yeah, it still doesn't make me sleep good at night um, about the answers we have to what to do with this conundrum of, of what experience is. But it strengthens my belief in that as to what I do go forward, and it gives me better language to help people. So I appreciate it.
no, me too. And that actually, the fact that you're not able to sleep well because of it is actually a sign we're doing it correctly, because that's what philosophy does. It ruins
That's right.
eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. These questions just make it harder to sleep.
So
Make one
bright.
more anxious.
So bright. Uh,
The examined life is not worth living, and neither is the unexamined life is not worth living, and neither is the examined one.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Good stuff, Robbie. Okay. We'll package this one up, and don't forget to like us, because we need to be liked.
yeah,
We like being liked. We like when people sign up to our free information. We like commentary on your phone, on the internet, with your thumbs, with letters and words. Yeah.
James and I are actually, for those of you who don't know, we are actually pretty advanced AI bots, and we actually will cease to exist should we not get sufficient likes, comments, and subscribes. So
Mhm.
just putting that out there.
Yeah. And every bit of your connection to us will not exist as well.
Yeah. Maybe that makes people feel less sympathetic for us. Now that they know we're not human, but we're just AI
True.
bots.
True.
But like, comment, and subscribe. Smash that button.
Yeah. Right there.
Right there. Right. Where? What?
Over here.
All
All right,
right.
buddy. Let's I'll package this up, and we transfer, as in me and everyone else here. We'll transfer it to you.
Awesome.
We'll see you on the other side.
All right. Talk to you later.
Take care.